So everyone take your hands. Put them up. Okay, ushers, come get their wallets. No, we'll save that. We'll put them up at the end of the offering. Thanks, John. Hands up. Can hear. Is it me? Take a look at your hands. Hands up. And really examine every part, every wrinkle, every bruise, every mark that is in those hands. They tell a story. Your hands tell the story of your life. And, it's funny that I've heard it say the windows. The eyes are the windows to the soul. Well, today we're going to talk about your hands. Those miracles that you see right in front of you, however you judge them to be, are the window to your life. It is the window to the life that you have inherited when you were born onto this plane of existence. They are a window to the life that you have led up to this moment. They are a window to the energy you are playing in your life right now in this now moment. And if you want to know what your destiny is, look at your hands. They're telling a story. We're going to talk about that today a little bit. For instance, our hands tell us about the race consciousness that we were born into. When we enter this realm of existence, this human experience, we inherit a certain consciousness, a race consciousness of the human race. But we've also inherited cultural consciousness, cultural belief systems, and feelings about what is true and what is not true. And I don't know about you, but I inherited a whole baggage full of family consciousness. My grandparents from centuries past, my mother and my father, my brother, I inherited a way of moving through this life experience. Now, is it good? Is it bad? Well, I'm going to submit to you that it's none of that. It's interesting, but it's something for me to become aware of. And our hands become the window to see what that race consciousness is, our history. So, for instance, I can look at my hands and I can see the age spots that I used to look at my grandfather's hands. And I used to see them on his hands and wonder what those spots were. They're showing up on my hands now, and I used to curse them. But now I look at them and I say, this is a symbol of all the good that I received from my grandfather. And it's a window to the energy that he transferred to me. You see, our hands are the means of transferring spiritual energy. Again, as we've talked about, our body is a gift. Our hands are a gift. And energy is transmitted. I can picture my grandfather as he held my head and cradled my head as a child and asked me to turn a certain way into the light so he could cut my hair. I remember the warmth of those hands, the love that was in those hands, and that love was transmitted. I can also remember a sense of fear as my grandfather's eyes got worse, and he wasn't just cutting my hair. He was cutting my ears. I can picture my grandmother's hands right here, the energy of my grandmother, and my grandmother's hands are right here. The blankets that she knitted, painstakingly, hour after hour, knitted, that adorned the beds of every one of her grandchildren. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And there was a transmission of energy through hands that I carry with me today, a sense of love. I also see the hands of grandparents that threatened and raised a hand. And I carry that energy, an energy of fear perhaps, an energy of anger. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. It's neither. It's mine to look at the window of my hands, which is a window to my soul, to my consciousness. Life is consciousness. And so we are creating out of the energy field that was transmitted through the consciousness of my grandparents. And my mom. I used to watch my mother play piano. She played piano beautifully. And I wanted as a child to be able to play the piano as beautifully as my mother played piano. And also through that exercise picked up the energy of my mother, who never would give herself any degree of praise for what she was able to create on the piano. Always holding a consciousness that she was less than. She wasn't as good as. That's energy that was transmitted through my experience of my mother's hands. Good? Bad? It just is. My father taught me how to throw a curveball. I remember his hands wrapped around mine, teaching me how to hold the ball and throw a curve. He wasn't too successful at it. Teach me how to use a tool wrapped around my hands, teaching me how to use a tool in the workshop. There was an energy transmitted in those moments through hand. God was made visible through the consciousness. See, and he gave me the consciousness that he had held for centuries, that he had inherited for centuries, and he passed it on to his son. I also saw the hand of my father who hit, and the hand of my mother who slapped. Now, I can bemoan that today, and I can be angry, and I can call it horrible and evil and terrible, or I can say, that energy was transmitted to me, one form or another. It is not good or bad. It is, and it is mine to decide that I am no longer defined by what I choose to release. You see, we're born into that consciousness. We didn't have a choice, but I have a choice today. Do I carry the energy of my grandparents and my parents, or do I choose to release it? Do I choose to receive the love, the tenderness, and the compassion? And do I choose to release the anger and the fear? My other grandmother on my dad's side played piano as well. And she had a grace consciousness, a belief in arthritis. And her greatest fear for as long as I knew my grandmother was that she was going to lose the ability to play the piano. Thoughts held in mind reproduce after their kind. And I watched as my grandmother's hands slowly withered, crumbled, where she could no longer touch the keys and receive the therapy and the love and the enjoyment of creating music. She manifested her own reality. Each of us is manifesting our own reality. But we are not defined by the consciousness we were born into. We define ourselves as spiritual seekers by the consciousness we are holding in our own lives. So, we release. But I have a history too. And so I can look at my own history, look at your hands. What history do you see? I can see these hands. I have had hundreds of foster children, and I can see putting the Band-Aid on a knee that's been scarred up. And the exchange of energy between that foster child and myself was beautiful and wonderful. And I also can see in that same moment a consciousness that I began to develop that said, I'm only as good as what I can do for you. I don't know where it came from, but in those exchanges of energies as a foster parent, I began to hold a thought that I was only as good as what I could do and not by who I was. Is it good? Is it bad? It's just interesting, and it's something for me to examine. I can see my hand placed upon the shoulder of my friend Jim, my homeless friend Jim. The first time I met him, and he reeked to high heavens. It was hard to be in his presence. And the fear I had wondering if the smell was going to be on my hands when I removed it. So there was an exchange of love, of compassion. But there was also an exchange of fear. And let me tell you, in that exchange, through my hand and through his hands and our embrace, there was an exchange of energy and a consciousness I began to develop of blame and anger why nobody had taken the time to get to know Jim. Why nobody had reached out and loved this man just because he smelled bad. I can see moments in a hospital room as I look at my hands. Sitting at the bedside of somebody who was trying to find a way to say goodbye. And the realization that came from that sometimes there are no words. Sometimes there are no thoughts or feelings, and that my hand communicates more beautifully than any part of my very being. The presence of God sometimes is made manifest much more so through my ability to hold somebody's hand. I can see that energy. I can feel that exchange of energy happening right here, right now, as we shared love without words to get in the way. I can also see there's a scar where I put my hand through a wall at one point. Now, I don't recommend it. It's not the greatest way to work out your problems or your issues. But what a wonderful window it was to a consciousness that I was holding at that point. A consciousness of wanting to control. And I'll own it. I am a Virgo. I have those tendencies. I like to control things. Well, it was a consciousness. And I put my hand through a wall at one point. It hurts. And I've still got marks from having done that. It's a window to a life that I was living. But we don't define ourselves not only by our race consciousness that we inherited. I don't define myself by my past mistakes. So I use the exercise of being with the energy that I am holding, the consciousness that is displayed in how I use my hands, and I release what I don't need that doesn't serve me anymore. And allow the energy that I did receive that was loving, that was beautiful, that was holy, that was the experience of God. And I choose today to make a new choice. So how are you using your hands today? You know, it feels kind of silly, but if you look at your hands and how you are using your hands, the posture that you are holding in your life today, it's an indicator of where you're going. We're not talking about reading palms. We are talking about looking at the consciousness that's showing up without you thinking about it. You know, in New Thought, we talk a lot about consciousness, and it feels like this untangible thing I can't get my hands or my head around. But if you look at your hands, they're telling you exactly what your destiny is going to be. Frank Outlaw, he said, watch your words because they become your destiny. I'm going to say, watch your hands. Watch your hands because they are showing you exactly what your destiny is going to be. In your posture through life, do you find yourself in this kind of posture? Resistance, pushing away, fighting against. You know, I found that at a particularly tense place in my life, I would go to sleep, and I would, on the edge of sleep, realize that I was holding my hands like this. It was a symbol of consciousness. I consciously now go to bed like this. But your life will show you. Your hands will show you. Are you like this? Are you like this? Are you getting thumbs up to the world? Or do you find that there's a lot of thumbs down? Here's a really important one. How many of you go through your life with your hand looking like this? You know who you are. Well, there you are. Blame. The energy's out there. My power's out there. Or do we realize that the other fingers are pointing back at us? There is some work for me to do. Do you find yourself, and this is a big one for me, I found that I was doing this. You ever wring your hands? It's a simple little thing, but boy, is it a testimony to a consciousness that I am holding. Or do you find your hands in a place of prayer? When you want to go here, and you're anxious, and you're full of the human condition, and you can't handle it, how quickly do your hands change from here to here? It's a symbol of the energy that you are playing. How many of you give what I call the Hawaiian good luck sign? I won't, you know which finger it is. Are you hanging loose in life, or are you flipping that middle finger up? You know who you are. It's not bad. It's not good. And you no longer have to define yourself by the energy that you are playing when you become aware and you make a different choice. How many of you are sitting on your hands? Sitting on your hands, nothing gets done. I'm afraid to take action. I invite you to begin to set a process of changing your mindset, changing the energy that you are playing by changing simply how you are showing up in life. Hands up, yes, hands up. Hands up fully and completely to embrace the vast miracle that is life, that is goodness, that is God showing up as many, many faces, as many, many experiences. Yes? So, what is the greatest thing we can do with our hand? You know, the Christian world, the Orthodox Christian world, says that we place our lives into the potter's hand. And there's a lot of songs that are beautiful songs about, into the potter's hand I commend my spirit to mold me and to guide me and to make my life what it can be. Well, what I've learned in Unity is that's putting the responsibility of the molding of a life on somebody else, on something outside of me. Every single day you are given a life, the opportunity. Every year, 525,600 minutes to mold the life that you want. You are not defined, and by the way, I love Play-Doh. You are given the ability to mold the life, and there is not an interfering presence or spirit or God or entity or personality that's going to interfere. All that God has ever been, all that God will ever be has been given to you. Now, my deepest apologies to God that I'm likening God to clay. But all the substance and source of life is yours. Use it. You can sit on it, you can clench it, you can hold it, but guess what? You can mold it, and you can make it something different every single day. Now, when I was in pottery school, everything I made ended up somehow becoming an ashtray. You know, and the reality is nobody in my family really smoked except my grandfather. So I don't know why it became ashtray. But the more I worked with the clay, the more adept I got about making things. Maybe today I choose to make a turtle. Tomorrow I make a vase for my mother. Maybe I make a beautiful heart today. Now I can do a heart. And I make a really mean heart that looks like an ashtray. But the reality is there is not an interfering spirit that's going to say, I don't like what you created today. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you're right or you think you're wrong, you're right. God's not going to interfere and say, why did you make that choice? Let me correct it for you. It's your clay. Make it what you will. Mold it, shape it, love it, and create. But what a great experience it can be when I begin to realize that Greg Cole shows up, and he's been given some clay too. He's a unique, beautiful expression of God, and we can create together. That God shows up as Frank Birdsong, as blue clay. Lee Lamb shows up with his clay, and we all come together, and we begin to build a cathedral of life. We raise the consciousness by loving each other more fully, and go, guess what, Lee, I'm going to take your clay, you take mine, and let's make something together. Let's put it all together. That's what community is about. Is you're bringing your consciousness, I'm bringing my consciousness, and we are creating a new reality. And it is not just a reality for us individually or us collectively. It is raising the vibration of the world. It is not a small thing we do by getting together on Sunday morning. I want you to really, really hear that. You know, you can change the family consciousness that you inherited by simply being here and proving love, by bringing your clay and molding it with somebody else and creating something different, a different paradigm, a different energy field. And if we are all one, as we teach in this church, we are all one. You are raising the collective vibration even without your family knowing it. And I believe you're raising the collective vibration for family members that have even passed to a different experience. A greater reality of God and love is now available because of your willingness to create. And we talk about how we create. Whoops, I'll leave that there. How do we create? With our mind and our heart. Yes? But guess what? Thoughts are absolutely useless unless we have our hands involved in the equation. You know, we say the male aspect of the thinking nature coupled with the female aspect of the feeling nature creates. It doesn't do anything until you put your body behind the exercise. And I do something, and I use the vast miracle that is my hand, that are my hands, to bring the manifest reality of spiritual truth into physical reality. And that means service. That means getting off the couch and doing something. Unity principle number 5 is the truth that you know is the truth that you live. You can sit in a cave all day long, and you can hold a certain... We're good? A certain consciousness, and nothing gets done. The collective consciousness doesn't raise. The love on the planet doesn't raise until we get our hands involved in the process. We are the potters. St. Teresa of Avila, she said, Christ has no body now on earth but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Today I'm challenging us to create a new story through our hands, to create a new paradigm through our hands by using them for the greatest gift we can possibly give, and that is to serve each other. To serve each other, to get beyond the words and to reach out and sit at a hospital room and hold somebody's hand and just love them. Get physically involved in the raising of the paradigm. Get physically involved in the raising of the collective vibration. We talk about hands-on healing all the time in this church. I believe it's really, in this physical realm, the only way we're going to have healing is by physically putting our body behind that which we know to be true mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Knowledge of truth is nothing until it is put into action. Words are cheap. Talk is cheap. Do something. And when you do that, it is a moment that I had with my friend, my homeless friend Jim. It is a moment of the Christ light that I am, sharing Christ's goodness with a fellow Christed being, and oneness is restored. And suddenly I begin to realize that Lee's clay and my clay, it's all the same clay. And what we have created together is just a manifestation of our willingness to meet God, to meet the face of God in our relationship. Service is the highest form of prayer. Service with these hands is the highest form of communion with the divine essence of life. Service is the highest form of knowing God. I want to tell you a story of this picture over here. You see the picture? It's been around for a couple of weeks. And I'll preface the story with the scripture from Matthew, verse 25. Whatsoever you do to the least of these, you do to me. This is coming from a consciousness. He wasn't talking about Jesus the man. He was talking about the one power and presence that is all life. When you serve another, you raise it for everybody. When you serve in love, you have raised the possibility of love for everybody. So these hands tell a story. Your hands tell a story. Let me share this one. These are the hands of Albert Dürer. Probably never heard of him. It was painted by his brother, Albrecht Dürer. They grew up in Nuremberg, Germany. 18 children in this family. The father had to work 3 jobs just to put food on the table. They struggled and they struggled. But both Albert and Albrecht had a dream. They had a vision. They wanted to go to the academy in Nuremberg and learn to be a great artist. But they absolutely knew that their father could not afford to send one of them, let alone both of them. So they devised a plan. And they flipped a coin. Whoever would win that toss would go off to art school and learn to be a magnificent artist. The one who lost the coin toss, he would go down and he'd work in the coal mines. Slave in the coal mines in order to support his brother's dream. And then when the time was done and he'd finished art school, they would switch places. And he would sell his art to create the opportunity for the other brother to go. Well, Albrecht won. Albrecht Dürer won the coin toss. He's the artist. He went off to school, and his brother, Albert, went immediately into the coal mines, slaving, manual labor. 4 years passed, and during that 4 years, Albrecht Dürer's art was far greater than even his professors in school. He became world-renowned. He was commanding great prices for his commissions to do art. 4 years passed, he complete, he was world famous. And there was a celebration at the Dürer family as he came home. And a big giant feast for the whole family, all 18 children there. And when the meal was finished, Albrecht Dürer stood with a toast and said, "This is responsible. This is possible because of the work of my brother Albert. I owe my life to him. I owe my art to him. And I raise a glass in toast to the love and the service that he shared with me. And now, my dear brother, it is your turn. And I will take the proceeds of my paintings and I will support you in art school." At the other end of the table, Albert was shaking his head, no. And tears were pouring down his face. No, no, no. And when he gained his composure, he stood up. And he said, "No, brother, for me it is too late." 4 years of working in the mines. Every bone in my hand has been broken at least once. And I cannot raise a glass to give you a toast, let alone hold a paintbrush and create fine lines on a palette. No, my brother, for me it is too late. 450 years have passed. Albrecht Dürer's paintings hang in museums all over the world. This one is probably his most famous. This was his tribute. This is a painting of love. It's not a painting of hands. For in honor of his brother, these are Albert Dürer's hands of love, hands of service, hands of giving. So the question I ask you today, is the work of art the painting itself? Or is the work of art the story that the hands tell? Whatsoever you do to me, you do to the least of these, you do to me. This painting brought up a lot of emotion in me this week as I prepared for the talk. I mentioned earlier my grandmother, who was riddled with arthritis, who could not play the piano. And I watched as I inherited a fear about that because I have arthritis as well. No, I don't have it. I'm experiencing it and I am releasing it because I don't choose that consciousness. But my grandmother pulled me aside off the baseball field when I was 11 years old. She said, "Richard, this is a scale. I want to show you." And she did the best she could to show me. And she introduced me to the greatest joy, the greatest beauty, the greatest experience of God that I have ever experienced, and that is sitting right here behind these keys. Now, is the work of art my ability to go up and down on the scales here? Or is it the love that has been transferred to me by somebody who cared enough to say, I can't do it, but I will give it to you? The last time I saw my grandmother, she was dealing with the outpicturing of her consciousness, afraid that she would get dementia and Alzheimer's and not be able to recognize anybody. And so I sat at her bedside. There were no words. Words failed me. But there were hands. There were hands united in service and love and appreciation and gratitude. And she didn't know who I was, so I walked over to the piano that was in the room that she was in. And I just began playing, probably something like this. And this woman who didn't know who I was, suddenly through the power of my hands, beyond my words and my thoughts and my fears and my tears, was sitting with my wife, and she raised her hand just like she had when she pulled me off the baseball field, and she began beating time. She turned to my wife and she said, I am responsible for that. So is the work of art what we create, what we play, what we do, or is the work of art who we are? Is the work of art how we show up on this planet as an expression of Christ? Mother Teresa said, let's quit talking about Christ and let's start being Christ. Let's stop talking about God and let's be the presence of God here and now. So I'm going to invite you to reach out with your hand to somebody to your left and your right. Hold somebody's hand, because it is absolutely the expression of God made manifest as this community. You are adding your clay to the whole. I am adding my clay to the whole. We are making a difference, not just here, but outside these walls. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. I know you can. Reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place. If you can, take a little time out of your busy day to give some encouragement to someone who's lost their way. We can change things if we start giving. Why don't you reach out and touch somebody's hand? Make this world a better place. If you can, reach out and touch somebody's hands. Make this world a better place. I know you can. You are a work of art. How you love. Thank you. How you love, how you serve, how you give is much more important than what you think. Let us be the demonstration of God. Let us be the demonstration of love, and to know that the work of art is as much your hands as it is what you do. You have an opportunity. This painting right here, we have a silent auction afterwards. If you'd like to take the energy of that home, there's a silent auction right outside. It's going to be done at 1 o'clock because Dr. B is coming in, and we don't want to be interfering with Dr. B. But also our resident artist, Sonia Osio, right there. Stand up. You all know who she is. Shares so much love with this community through her beautiful hands. And I had an idea. How wonderful would it be to tell the story of your hands in paint? To paint the story of your hands and how you show up as the temple of love. And she said she would be willing to do that. There's a silent auction for her to do a masterpiece. Either your hands, in whatever position you choose to tell a story. It could be the Hawaiian good luck sign if you want. It could have been A-OK, or it could be holding hands with a child or a loved one. Whatever it is, that silent auction is happening out there as well. There is more love on the planet because there's you on the planet. There's more love on the planet because we are here. Never forget it. You are the face of God. Namaste.